after our short break. And we are going to listen our third speaker today. And to be honest, I'm excited because this is something which I want to try in my life. So, Roy Cogan, who is this person? To be honest, he is the person who cannot do one thing at the same time. Just listen, please. So, it should be at least 4. Now, currently, he's writing over 4 books. He's running 4 podcasts. 3 of them basically got the first place on the charts. So he will tell us about this, I believe, more, because I have no idea how it works. Also, he has founded over 10 companies. So can you imagine this? This person is multitasking. And today, he will share with us secrets how to set up a podcast, and most important, how to bring this podcast to the top of the charts. So please help me to invite on our virtual stage our next speaker, Roy Cogan, with his speech, with his workshop, setting up a podcast the proper way. Roy.
Thank you, Adele. Thank you very much for a nice introduction. So are you able to, I can share screen, yes, that I can. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll have, just to let you know at the very start, because sometimes people might be kind of making notes and everything. I have done this on Prezi and it's open source. So you will be able to go back and look at it, and I'll share the link later so that you can actually look at it in your own time. So you won't have to be trying to listen and make some notes if you really want to set up a podcast like Adele. So now I have to move. And you can just let me know if you can see the screen.
Yes, it's seen.
Okay, perfect. So I suppose the first thing I'll do is let you know why I started podcasting 4 years ago. And it's strange because I just saw the Facebook event reminder today. So it is exactly 4 years today that this thing happened. I went to an event in Cancun in Mexico, and there was a guy from New Zealand, and he said he'll teach us the haka. So we all were practicing in the morning to do this haka on the stage on the 5th day of the event. And we ripped off our tops and went up. And prior to that, I didn't actually want to do it. I was so nervous because even though now, I've been in Toastmasters for nearly 4 years. Prior to that, I hated public speaking. And at the event, it was, what's your quest? So I was thinking, what am I doing in life to have a quest? Am I just chugging through my day? So I made it a mission at that event that I wanted to expose corruption and fraud and to make sure that other people didn't go through the same things I had done. And there was 2 very good speakers there, Eric Edmides and Vishen Lakiani. And Vishen is the founder of Mind Valley. And I thought, if I want to get my message out, I need to be a better speaker. So when I came back, I joined Toastmasters. So I just embraced that, like you're talking about 4 and 4 and 4. I actually was a member of 4 clubs at one stage. So that shows kind of why the 4 thing kind of works with me. Some people say it's 3 of everything. Maybe it's 4 for me. And after about 2 years, I went to another event with the same company, and there was a guy doing podcasting. And I'd listened to him, but I never even thought of doing a podcast. So this guy, it was about a 5-hour workshop. So I went along, learned it. I said, okay, this is good. And I thought, hey, I can actually do a podcast to get my message out. I couldn't really do it on the one that I wanted to, which is The Awakening, because it's so controversial. And I knew I needed to kind of get stronger and understand everything about it before I do it. So I said, I have enough experience now with the Toastmasters, being 2 years in. So I set up And it's exactly 2 years now, the speaking podcast. It's November in 2018. So that's 2 year one. So that was the first basically podcast that I had done. So for those that don't know what a podcast is, I'm sure you probably all do, but just to let you know, it's basically like a radio, that you can turn on a radio station. And the beauty of it, I mean, some do have advertisements, but a lot don't. So you're not listening to pharmaceutical drugs. You're not listening to the news every hour, which in my opinion is constantly negative. You can listen to something about health. You can listen to something like Chris on comedy. You can listen to so many different things on topics you like. So that's mainly a podcast that you can upload onto a system and people can listen when they want, where they want. Now, there's different types of podcasts. You have the interview style. So I have two interview types. The speaking podcast is an interview type because I'm interviewing different people from around the world. The same with the awakening one. Solo is when you're speaking yourself. I've done a few solo ones, but I find them hard, to be honest. I don't enjoy them as much, but some people love that. Like one of the podcasts I listen to is The Blind Boy. He'll talk for an hour and a half, just talking on his own, and it seems to work. The third is a co-host. So my Learn Polish is a co-host. There's the two of us. I'm the student and Camilla is the teacher. And then you can have another type, which is questions and answer. So if you're thinking of setting up a podcast, that's one of the questions that you should actually think about. Which is the best for you? This is a Simon Sinek famous quote, "What is your why?" And it's the exact same with podcasting. Like some people think, will I do podcasts? I just want to do it to make money. I would say that's the wrong reason. I think it's about doing it about your passion. Like I'm doing a lot now with the 4 podcasts. I hear a lot of people, they've won and they struggle to even get an episode out a week. I don't struggle because I love what I do. And I think if your passion and your why, maybe to help people with health, maybe to get comedy out, whatever it is, just getting your message out. If you love what you do and it's not about the money, you've a way better chance of it being successful. Like that's just one of the guys. I had interviewed him, young guy, he was 16 or 17 at the time. And after I interviewed him, it inspired him to actually set up a podcast where he was interviewing people around the world in his university of the traumas that were happening, but it was a very good podcast with a good message. Why is it increasing? Like at one stage I was listening to maybe 10 podcasts. It's gone down now because I prefer now to be making them rather than listening to them, but it's very popular, especially in the US and the UK, very popular. You're getting your message out. You can liaise with other people and just building your audience. Now, in a typical workshop, I could actually maybe get you to do this, but this is something rather than people, because not everybody wants to set up a podcast. Some people may be just curious, but this is something you can do yourself later. So if you would like the idea of a podcast, but don't know what you would like to do, you can just have the things that are of interest to you, draw a line down, and the expertise, and just kind of connect them and cross them out and go, hey, like for example, with the speaking podcast, I had been doing the Toastmasters, and I know Radek as well, Radek Dombrowski, he's done a Polish version. And so, maybe it's speaking, maybe it's something else. And that's how you can actually figure out perhaps a way of doing a podcast. So these are my 4, and I'll kind of show you my journey as I go along about kind of improving, like the picture at the start where you'd see the earphones. That was my original speaking podcast logo. And the reason that I changed it is I'm constantly just kind of trying to improve. I mean, when I was starting off, I think I read something like 7 books on podcasting, just really wanted to understand how to do it right. And the thing is, with a picture, I know I don't have one on the meditation because it's kind of different. I'll explain that one as well. But people connect with a person. So a picture is actually, if it's suitable to what we're doing, a picture does help because the person then will connect with you instead of the logo. Because even in a business, a lot of times people spend so much time with the logo, and the logo is only important to the person that has the business. and people forget that. They make it so important. And when they're sending letters, they have a big, huge logo at the top of it. And who's that important to? The customer doesn't really care about your logo. So I think it's kind of similar with this. Have something that people recognize. So now I have that across the board with the Facebook and the Instagram and everything, so people will recognize it, and the same with the other ones. But a logo makes a big difference. My second one was the meditation podcast. And when I went to all these different events, I started experiencing meditation, breath work, sound meditation, and they were incredible. And I'd listen to different podcasts, but then they'd either disappear or then they became paid podcasts. And it was frustrating. So I was asking people, why don't you set up a podcast with meditation? And I got sick of asking people. I said, I'm just going to do it. And what I do is I reach out to people. I say, send me your meditation. So there's actually none of my meditations on that podcast. There's just different people sending me breath work, meditation. I do a quick introduction, and then I have a description where they can find the person, and it's actually doing very well. The Learn Polish was the next one, and that's kind of strange as well. I'm 13 years in Poland. I love Poland. Languages isn't my first skill. Like, I done Irish in Ireland from 4 to 17, and I can't speak Irish, so that'll tell you how good I am at languages. But with the Polish one, I wanted to learn Polish because I'd listen to CDs in the car and everything, and I wanted to learn by a podcast. So the only ones I could find were only in Polish, which was, made sense, as I would say. And the other thing was they were scripted, and I do not enjoy scripted podcasts. Maybe you do. Some people might like it. Maybe you might even think you're doing a scripted podcast yourself, but I personally cannot listen to a scripted podcast. So that's actually my ex-wife. She was my teacher. That's how we met, and we have a good relationship. And I asked her, hey, can we do a podcast? And we did, and it's actually very successful. The last one is The Awakening. And like, I'll show you in a minute the difference between pictures when I start off and other ones. But, I went to a photographer to get the pictures, and you can see the difference with when I show you in a second. So getting a decent picture is actually important as well, because the reality is when you have your little logo on the phone, people are scrolling through. You want to grab their attention. Like, you see tape on my mouth, that is grabbing your attention. If you're, Polish, the colors will grab your attention, and the flag, even though it seems small, but it will get your attention. So just pay attention to the logo that you're going to do. So this is just kind of, I suppose, my bragging rights of the different chart position to show what I've done over the years. And at the start, you'll see, because it's the old Speaking Podcast logo, I was watching it, and then I stopped paying attention. So you can just see, Spain, number 2, Belgium, there's different countries. I don't have the countries over it, but I got into the UK, number 4, number 1 in some countries. And there's a thing called Chartbin. So I subscribe to that, and it actually gives me the charts. And there was a load I wasn't aware of where I was in the charts. So it's only recently that I found out that I was in certain positions in the charts. And why I say it's important to do this at the start is when you get into the chart in a certain position, you can put it on your social media, and out of curiosity, more people will start listening. So it's well worth promoting your different, and I'll just fly through them. Number 1 in Germany with the meditation, Poland, which is important to me. I was delighted to see that. UK, USA on spirituality, number 1. That was a big one as well for me. With the Awakening, that's the best that I've done so far. And I'll explain, I actually did a course on recently because I wanted to up the level of my podcasting. And I met amazing people on the course, but I was expecting to get better marketing. And that's what I wanted to do, because I wanted to get to the next level. And I followed their advice, and that's why I didn't get this one to the number 1, but I will. I've already got one of the shows to number 8. And it's been, I think, number 77 in Poland, 55 in Ireland. But I want to get it to number 1 in, like, the Learn Polish, Australia. It was number 1, Sweden number 1, Singapore 1, UK 3, USA 3. So it's definitely monitor your charts. Like you can set when you're going to, that's actually, there's a free version and a paid version. I use the free version, and you can get a daily email. I would encourage you to get the daily email because it's like the music charts. You can be in and out fast. And what you can do is when you see yourself going up the charts, you can take a screenshot, take a picture of the map and put it out there. So people will then from them countries or maybe share, and it might actually help you to get to number one. So it's important to keep track of where you are. So these are the different places that you can listen to your podcast. There's a lot more. These are just like the iTunes was the biggest one. There's the Google and Spotify. Like Spotify started buying out a few of the other ones and they're getting very big. So my statistics now, I can see sometimes Spotify is actually more listeners than on Apple. So I think, and Joe Rogan, if you're not aware, he was one of the most popular. He signed a deal for like 100 million to be just specifically on Spotify. So they're one of the bigger players. Where do people listen to the podcast? Well, driving. Well, when you weren't under lockdown, you could drive and that was okay. Traveling, biking. What I do is if I'm cleaning, I listen to the podcast, so if you're ironing or if you're cooking, whatever. So rather than, so you can, double task. So it's find a topic that you like and just start listening to it. And then if you start sharing that as well, other people might start listening to a podcast and, they'll start listening to yours. This kind of changes every now and again, the different topics. So when you're deciding that you want to have a podcast, you pick a certain topic. So for example, I have the education, the language course, and so you can pick health, you can pick whatever you want. So make sure you pick the right topic for the podcast that you're doing. The popular ones, Chris would probably like that one there, the comedy, and there's the business floor, maybe like that one, but they're the top 5. Now, this is the $1 million question. Where should you host your podcast? I suppose the best way there, the Podbean is where I put my Polish one, and the Anchor are the other 3. And when you go into Anchor, it's just, I think I'm currently, there's 9, it'll show you in 9 different places. So Stitcher, Google, Public Radio, Podcast Radio, Breaker. You know as well on Amazon Alexa and Pandora and different things like that. Some of them, it does it automatically. Others, you have to manually put it up. The RSS feed is basically the link that you get for your podcast. So it's unique to you. And sometimes you just go into a different, like public radio or podcast radio or whatever, and just paste it, and then it'll accept it, and then it'll be there. And I usually ask people, let me know where you listen to your podcast, because people have done that on my social media, and just by them telling me, I was able to add it. I mean, do you get huge amounts of downloads? If you get a few, it all adds up. The big players are the top ones there, the Apple, the Google, and the Spotify. So it's a strange one. What I would say is, if you ask me where will I host my podcast, I would say it's the exact same as asking me what type of car you should drive, because every single one has so many different bells and whistles onto it. Like there's 20, there's probably over 100 at this stage. There's a lot more, and you can do your research and check it. And if you're really serious about this, perhaps that's what you can do. I mean, I have done that when I'm not sure, was it my second or third one? I done a load of research to try to see which is the next one that I should try. And you'll see different there's different charts. What's typical, like Flora mentioned going into Google earlier, you can go into Google and one search will show up this, the next search will show you the next different 5. So no matter what you search, you'll find something different. But what I would advise is to be very careful, because for example, it's free and it says episodes hosted for 90 days. And what that means is, like, first of all, 2 hours isn't a lot. For my Polish one, that would be no problem. For the other ones, there's no way that 2 hours is enough in a month. But the problem is after 90 days, they disappear. You do not want that to happen. So I would not go with this one, but the other ones are free. Like the Anchor is free. So don't worry, you don't have to be spending money. I mean, I'm a big proponent of don't spend it unless you need to. So these are other ones. You can see it goes up, even 85 bucks a month. Just, it can be expensive, but this is when you're getting to the million downloads and everything. So there's different kind of tiers, and you can go up. But if you want to research it, like check 10 or 20, just go into podcasting groups, ask them what's the pros and cons. I've done that. I've done a load of that. A lot go with the Anchor that I'm with. I'm 3 with Anchor, 1 with Podbean, and some don't like it and they start saying why. So it's whatever you prefer yourself. Now this, as you can see, my podcasts are kind of speaking podcast, meditation podcast, awakening podcast, learn Polish podcast. Does it work? I mean, I've got into the chart, so perhaps it does. I would make it, like, sometimes people have all these kind of fancy names and everything. What I would say is, will people remember it? That's the most important thing. You want them to remember it. I mean, you're going to love it. You're going to remember it. It's like your logo, like I said earlier. But if your listener isn't going to remember and has to try to think about it, it's not very good. So what I would suggest is, 1, try to think of what your podcast is about, if you can find a name that suits, and then do a search on, say, name.com or GoDaddy, one of these places. The .com didn't exist for 2 of the ones I had, so I went with .org, and it doesn't matter. I just make sure that I put .org for everything, so you don't have to have .com. And if you're just doing a Polish one, you'd have .pl, and there's a good chance that it will be available. But it's just something to think about before you actually start getting your design and putting it up onto the system. You will look at my old logo, and to be honest, I'm ashamed that this is still out on the internet. It's hard to make it disappear, because once something is on the internet, it tends to be there for life. But that was the very first logo that I did for the Polish one. I just took a picture myself and then just sent it to someone to check that kind of learn Polish. I said red and white, and it done the job. It was okay for a while, but when you want to up the level, the logo, I thought, was important. So this is kind of the theory behind improving the logo. You had the mic is the light bulb, the idea is education, Polish flag, and this is what we came up with. And it's jumped since we've done that. So I definitely think it made a huge difference. That was the old, like the Podbean, you get a website. With the Anchor, you still get a website, but this one is, the Podbean costs something like $108 a month, or not a month, a year. So it's not that expensive to have a website for it. But just look at the old one with the old logo and the new one. There's a big difference. It looks so much better. You wouldn't think that the picture could do that, but it does. And just think as well, when you're scrolling through your phone, that will stick out a lot better. So it's really worth to, spend the time, and it's not that expensive. To be honest, I paid $32 for that logo. So, I mean, we just sent the pictures and the person kind of gave a few ideas. So you don't have to pay thousands. I mean, there's places that do 99designs.com. You can even pay a $5 on some of these things, Fiverr.com, and there's all different tiers there. So I would suggest you don't have to spend too much, but rather than doing it yourself, it's worth spending a few bucks for that. And I also, for the 32, I got the social media kit, which meant that we could also put it on the Facebook and different things, and it had the right descriptions on them. That was just the older speaking podcast, but that's what you get with Anchor. So you can actually upload an episode, just hit episode, the dashboard, you hit the dashboard, it'll tell you exactly where it's hosted, your episodes. In the dashboard, you get all your numbers, your downloads, statistics. Like the heading is important as well when you're putting up an episode, because like a lot of the time, a lot of these courses and everything, they're kind of telling you about the podcasting, but the reality is you could have the best podcast in the world, and unless you're going to apply marketing, nobody's going to know. So you have to grab people's attention, and one of them is actually the headline. So for that one, the founder of a $5 billion company on how to pitch to investors, like that will grab people's attention. And just be creative with your titles, and just look constantly, monitor what's working, what's not. There's times you make mistakes, but just, change it. You can actually even change a title. So if you found something wasn't good, or if you had offended somebody, you can change it, and it doesn't affect the actual listeners. But if you take it down, then you're losing the downloads that you've got. So you don't want to be doing that. because sometimes you can get 200 or 300 in a day. That's just when you go into the Anchor, where it's showing where it's available. So if you go into Anchor, it'll actually have all these little symbols. So if somebody is on an Android device, you can click on one of these and listen on that. And if they're Apple, they'll go to the Apple products and listen to your podcast via that. Because what you want to do is make it easy for them to actually understand. There's another important thing as well is getting into 5-star ratings. Like most of the time you'll hear me saying, give me a thumbs up, give me a 5-star rating, share with your friends. And how I kind of got into that a lot was I taught my son how to do magic, and I'd sit down with him watching the videos, and I saw when the guy was saying, make sure you subscribe and give me a thumbs up, and my son was reaching, and like he was only 5 at the time, it's reaching for the remote to give a thumbs up to the guy. And it's like, if you don't ask, you won't get. So make sure every podcast, because your audience will come and go, make sure you ask for a rating. I mean, I think I've over 400 now at this stage on the 5-star ratings and on the speaking podcast. But it's important because what happens is it helps you get up the charts as well. Because if there are people searching, they're looking at different ones, and there's a better chance of listening to mine than one that has 5-star. And I got into the habit of, when I meet somebody, asking them and make sure they do it there and then. It might seem like nothing, but it adds up. And what's strange is even when I started reaching out and asking people, later they were coming back on, hey, I started listening to your podcast. I actually enjoy it. I really like it. So you could be doing them a favor, but don't be embarrassed about things like that. Because at the end of the day, when you're in the charts, it's going to get more listeners because more people will see it when you're up the top. That's just one of the other things that when you go into the statistics that you look, and it'll tell you where the different countries are. Most of mine, there's kind of about 50% that's in the US. I'm just double checking the time there now. And then it gives you what devices they're on and what system. So like Anchor is Spotify basically. So now you'll have the Spotify showing that, and it varies from podcast to podcast, but I've seen it now where Spotify can be up to like 50%. That's another thing that's on the Podbean one. You can go in and see where your audience is from via map. You can also check episodes and see which ones are better. So sometimes you'll think you'll get a big player and that'll be your boost for a podcast, that you get a certain guy. Oh, if I can only get Tony Robbins, or if I could get this person, my podcast will go through the roof. I had some really good people on the speaking podcast, and the guy that got the most listens was a guy that was 16 and a beatboxer. So doesn't make a difference. And now with the awakening, I've had like the likes of David Icke, Sandy Williams, Mickey Willis. He's the guy that done Pandemic with over 1 billion views. And yes, they've got a lot of great views, but now I found that having conversations with ordinary people based on certain topics is getting better views, because we're just having a normal conversation. And the way to think of it is like, there's a fly on the wall that's listening, and you want to just make sure that they get it. And so don't be thinking that you need to get a star player to boost it. It helps, and you can cross promote. But the most important thing is just make sure that you have engaging conversations. So equipment, what do you need? Reality is you can start off cheap and just use something like that. If your budgets are tight, something like that, and you're plug it into your phone and you're good to go. And just I don't have it on the thing, but if you can look at my picture as well, because I can believe you can see my little screen below. What I do is I have earphones that I plug into the phone as a backup. So I have the mic. So I'll show you here now the different ones. This is the mic that I'm actually using. So as I said, I'm 2 years at it, still working perfect. Might have gone up because of what's happened recently. There's a lot of requirements for podcasting, so the price might have went up a bit, but I'm very happy with this one. It's still chugging away after 2 years, so good value. And most of them, like, this is just based on research that one of the ones I was told is very good. So if you want to go high end, you can get something like that. As I mentioned at the start, the whole lot it's on Prezi, so you'll be able to go back and look at this in slower time and just go through it in detail and read all the different things. That was the thing that I actually wanted to show you. That was 20 quid, and it's something I hadn't read, but I started doing it myself. Is from the very start, when there was times I would bring the computer and the microphone and just put it down on the table and interview the person, but I always had my phone and that microphone recording as well as a backup, because technology can fail. A computer can just do an update, something can go wrong. The last thing you want to happen is that you have the best interview of your life and it doesn't work. I've heard so many top podcasters saying that happened. It has never happened to me, but I've always had a backup, so I haven't needed it. The only time that I actually used that is one time I was going to Camilla to do the Polish one, and I had my bag with all the stuff ready, to bring out to her place, and I left the bag by the door, but I had that with me, and I said, I'm going to do it. And to be honest, you wouldn't really notice the difference. It was very good. So you could even podcast with that. That could be your first thing if there's a tight budget. That's a pop filter, and I have one of them there, and I've actually never used it. I bought it because it's like if you're kind of doing a podcast about Peter Piper peck the peckles, all the peas with puffing would come out, but I don't do that. I don't get the puffing sound, so I don't use it. But if you find in the way you speak, or just like that one is about 15, you can even get them for about 3 or 4 quid. So might be. That's something I've only got in the last 6 months. Somebody advised me about it. It's like a shield. So I have a shield here now in front of me, and it's just the acoustics. So it really helps. It stops the sound bouncing, especially if you don't have a good location, or if there's tiles around, because if you start recording where there's tiles, it'll just start bouncing. So it's really worth investing in that. I mean, you mightn't have to do it at the start, but definitely. And like that's 50. I mean, I think you can get them for even up to 30 quid. So that's another thing that I've got, and I've stuck them on the wall here where I am. They're just kind of acoustic cushions, so it just absorbs the sound. Maybe something not at the start if you're watching the pennies, but definitely when you want to improve the quality, it's worth looking at. Marketing is kind of one of the most important things in the podcasting. So like what I wrote on this one was kind of the guy has got 7 million TEDx views, and I put that picture up because when you see that, you kind of get, okay, he spoke in front of a very large audience. I wrote on that, what did I say to him to make him laugh like that? So that's the other thing. Like, no, we don't get the chance to kind of travel around as we used to. I have done loads of podcasts online on Zoom like this, and the audio then comes up with the video, and I can then not only have the audio of the podcast, I can also have the BitChute and YouTube. So I've got 3 channels and to be honest, sometimes with my new stuff, it's more popular, the videos, than the actual audio. So it's really worth, thinking of doing from the start. I said this one, the team got so hot, it felt like we were in the sauna, and it got something like 300, I think, views, downloads in the first day, just because people are curious. What the hell could you be talking about that would do that? And just take a picture of your guest. With this one, he's a Krag Maga. He's fairly famous in Poland. He teaches it all around. And I said, choke me. And the reason being is nobody really cares if you've just 2 people standing next to each other. It's okay, but that grabs your attention. It's like, what's going on there? So try to be creative with your pictures. I was a professor, had a tattoo on his arm of a cat, so I just kind of used that. This is another thing. With your email, make sure that you put your podcast on it. So like you can have the logo and the links that actually work. So you're really constantly promoting. And even if you're doing some other business, when you're sending that out, the amount of people that have came back to me and go, oh, you're doing a podcast, and then they start following you. So you'll get a lot of your listeners just by your daily business. And, just so make sure you put up that. some of the social media that you do. Like at one stage I had 7,500 followers and I was following 7 or 5,000 and I got no engagement. So I unfollowed all of them just to see, and it wasn't really working. So Twitter doesn't work. But what I found out is I wasn't doing much on Instagram either. And I've actually outsourced it. So I've now somebody working on my Instagram account because it's not something I enjoy. I do the Facebook, I enjoy that. But when you don't really understand it or you don't have the time, because it's a lot of time, the social media it's a lot of time just constantly putting out your podcast and letting people know what's going on. Better to get somebody else that can do it. And you don't have to pay that much for it. You can get people cheap for that. So like the Learn Polish podcast, I have a Facebook for every single podcast that I've got. What I would advise is I'm constantly every day putting something on this. So for example, I do 2 episodes a week. On the Monday, I just put up the audio and a picture of the audio saying latest episode just released. On the Tuesday, I'll take a pictures. So you'll see there just above the reach. The reach is way more with pictures. So the more pictures you have and the more attention grabbing the pictures are, the more people will see it. And then the third day is the video. So when I put it up on YouTube or BitChute, I post a link for that. And then I just repeat it for the rest of the week. But don't think just put it up once. Like this, the reality is with Facebook, people scroll for maybe 4 hours. So what you want to do is, if you can, post 4 times a day and go into groups. Like I'm in maybe 10, 20 different groups, like Foreigners and Much, Foreigners and Warsaw, all these different things. So I share it to them groups because you can see they're shared 20 times. So you're basically getting way more exposure. So whatever the topic is, try to find groups related to that. Same on LinkedIn, and that'll make a big difference. Regarding the editing, I use a PC, but if you have a Mac, you can use that. It's $21 a month. GarageBand is free. I know a few people use that. They say it's very good. This is what I use. It's free. It's Audacity. It's very easy, to be honest, because when you get the recording, that's what it looks like, what you see there. And if there's a pause, if there's somebody made a noise or coughed, you just highlight the part that they done that and you can just delete. And I'm not sure if I'll have time to do show you how to edit it, but if I can do it, trust me, anyone can do it. I got a guy to come and show me for half a day, and ever since it's easy. And I've even shown probably 10 or more people how to do it. So it is not hard. So do not fear the editing process. And the other thing is, a lot of people don't edit it. And what I would actually suggest is, if you want your podcast to work, make sure the sound is good. Because I know someone and they've put out 60 odd podcasts and they're really happy. Oh, I've got them all. But when you listen, you can hear the mouse clicking, you can hear coughs, ums, pauses, different things. I prefer to have quality and get it out. So it's up to yourself. But my advice would be get the sound right. And because sometimes people are listening on very good earphones and you don't want them to turn off because the quality isn't that good. So that's just kind of what I had, a system of how to edit it. So you go in and like you have silence. I'll try to show you that if I've got a second. It is easy. And if not, I have a video on it anyway that I can share. So I have a video up on YouTube that actually tells you how to do that. So I will try to do that in a second, which will show you how easy it is. But it's just a checklist that I have for this. The other thing that I did at the start, obviously I don't need to do that anymore, but it's like turn off the phones, including vibrate, doorbell, if you've air conditioning, different things. Because at one stage I had, you have people giving the Orlot key and they press the bell for everybody about 50 times. And if you're doing a recording, it can affect you. So just have a kind of checklist and keep doing it till it becomes natural. And, because everybody's house is different. Whether you've got a dog, somebody needs to take the dog out, stop them barking, whatever it is. But the last thing you need is you're doing a fantastic interview and you've got the dog barking or you've got somebody pressing the doorbell 5 times. So, just try to reduce the amount of time that you have to edit. I use this. This is another free tool. As you noticed, I like having free things because when you start subscribing to different things, they can all add up every month. So you don't want to have a big amount of money coming out. So free is good. So basically online convert. So I pick from the Zoom, you'll get the file. You just go into convert to WAV, and then it'll just give you in the format that you can edit. And then when I'm saving, I save it as MP3 and I upload it as MP3. Simple as that. So I suppose, would you like to ask questions, or would you prefer to show me that I show you some of the editing?
I think we have time for both.
Okay. So now I need to go into a different screen there. So I'm not sure how to, I think I have to stop screen and then go in again. All right, so this is the editing bit. So for example, that's Audacity just opened up. You open a file. I'm just going to say one that's existing already, just to give you a quick. So I'm not sure will you be able to hear it, but it doesn't matter anyway because.
Welcome to episode number 35.
Yeah. So that's basically what it is. So if there was, like, especially at the start, sometimes you might hear like the clicking, or I have a habit of going, welcome to. So just take that out. Anything you need to do, you just highlight it like that and take it out. And then I'll show you exactly how here. So I do a noise kind of profile. So I press record. Normally I plug out the mic, so you'll have a silent kind of bit. This is moving now because I'm talking. So just be quiet for a sec. Just assume that's a straight line because it should be. So you just highlight it and you do effect. Effect noise reduction. You press get noise profile. Then you do Control A, highlight the whole lot. Effect noise reduction, and you press OK. And if it's got an hour, or if it's got two, I mean, I've had some podcasts that were 2 hours. Obviously, this takes a bit longer, but this is the Polish one, so it's short. Then you do effect, normalize. And I have this written down, and I have a video on it as well, so you will be able to see. Then for filter curve, I go in here, manage, factory preset, bass boot, and I just bring it down. This might seem complex, but it's the exact same thing the whole time. So once you just look at it and you try it and look at it, it's okay. Then you do okay. This is fast. I'm nearly finished. So, you know, those that have fallen asleep, I apologize. Next one, you go filter curve, manage, treble boost. And honestly, I really haven't a clue of all these different things. I just got a sound guide to teach me. So I don't even understand, but it sounds good. The sound is okay once I've it done. Effect, normalize. Okay, and that's it. We're done. And then you just go file, save as, export as MP3. And the other thing is, basically, if you want to have audio, sometimes people have sound coming in or a different audio. Like I'm putting music at the end of some of them. I was doing it at the front and the end at the start, but I just found that it was more work for me. So now I just put them at the end. But if you want to attach an audio, you just go import audio and you just edited music that I have. It's there. I just double click it, edit, cut, close that, go here. At the end, I just go edit, paste, and then I go file, export as MP3, and that's it. And then you're just uploading that. So that's how you actually edit your podcast. I know it was kind of fast, but if you look back over it, because if I do it slow, it'd be probably a different one. But so what I would say is do not fear it. It's easy. It might look a bit complex now, but trust me, I can barely turn on a computer. If I go into the control panel, I haven't a clue what's going on. If I can do it, anyone can do it. It is actually very easy to do. So you just replicate what I've just done and the sound comes out very good. What I would say is put it on your videos on BitChute and YouTube, because like a lot of people don't even know about BitChute, but I've got thousands of views on my BitChute. It's getting very popular. So it's worth actually looking at that. So if there's anybody got any questions.
Yes, now it's sessions for questions. Actually, I have one, Roy. You mentioned about marketing, but like how to promote. Okay, I created my own podcast, right? Like a new fresh one. So no one knows me, like only my friends on Facebook, for example. I share the link. I ask them, please listen, like share. But how to promote it? How to, I mean, if there is kind of in Instagram, for example, hashtags or something which helps you to, you know,
hashtags work. Like what I was doing wrong with the Instagram is I used to always put in the website. I only found out that this week because I've outsourced it now. And the person says having your link on a website doesn't work. It's all about the hashtags. And in your bio, you have your link to your podcast. But hashtags, so for example, meditate, I'll have hashtag meditate, meditating, remain calm, relax, all these kind of things. So what, for those that don't understand hashtag, is people are doing a search and they search in these words and there's a good chance that you'll actually pop up. There's writehash.com, I think. There's another link that I use and it can actually give you examples. So you can put up a picture and that'll give you samples of a hashtag as well, the different hashtags to use. But that is one way. What the most important thing, and it's like if you're doing crowdfunding or anything, a lot of people think I'll do my podcast, I'll get out. You need your friends to help you. You need to go into your email list, your Facebook list, your LinkedIn list, and you need to slog it out. You can't just put it up there and just expect people to come in. You need to go, could you do me a favor? I'm really trying to improve my podcast. Could you actually listen to this and let me know if it's any good? What's the sound like? What's my interview style like? And can you give me a 5-star rating? Like when I wanted to get into the UK, I checked my database for all the people in the UK that I knew. And I said, I need you to do me a favor. And like there were people that came back and said, really enjoyed what you're doing, and they're still listening. So, it can actually benefit you, but you need to just constantly get your message out. Create the Facebook, keep posting. Like some people post once a week and they're wondering, why their numbers are maybe 10 or 20 downloads. You need to keep reminding people. And sometimes people think, if I keep posting it, I'll annoy them. The reality is they're not seeing it. Like the one I mentioned about Mickey Wills, like that's a really high-end guy and a guy that I know very well. I think I must have posted it 10 times. And somebody else posted it this week. They reposted it. And he said, I can't believe you got him on. And I was shocked. How come he didn't see it? So we just make an assumption that whether you've 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 friends on Facebook, you post something, they'll see it. That's not how it works. You need to just kind of keep posting and sometimes get creative with the pictures. So, or like there's a thing called snippet.club. So you can take 1-minute snippets and put the snippet of a decent part of the conversation and by just grabbing their attention. So someone will definitely listen to a minute out of curiosity. And if they go, ooh, that sounds interesting, then you have them. And so that's what I would recommend. Just keep slogging.
Okay, thank you very much. So anyone else would like to ask Roy?
Yeah, I could ask a question. So Roy, I was at similar presentation that you made, I think, a year and a half ago, as well as the division conference in Lodz. You as well taught about podcasts. And already at that time, I was curious because, to my opinion, a lot of podcasters that I listen to, they moved to YouTube and they use at least maybe sometimes they just show themselves, yes, together with all those microphones and so on. Sometimes they just show some, I don't know, street view, maybe very, very simple video, but still with video. And you told that podcasting becomes more popular and popular. So to my opinion, now direction is a little bit to video podcasts, not just to the sound. So why you decided now at those times, why you choose that audio and
Well,
not the video direction?
no, I actually do both, but they're separate, so you can't have the RSS feed connected. So the downloads on YouTube don't come up on my podcasting platform, but I recommend doing both. And the other thing is, sometimes you'll see people when you're interviewing them. So if I was interviewing you, you can have a split screen. I go for the split screen because I just prefer that. But some people, what they do is you can set it up that it's the speaker is talking and you only see the speaker. But it's worth doing both, to be honest with you. Like, at the end of the day, what you want to do is get as many listeners as possible. And like, I didn't talk about monetization because it's only something now I'm looking at. Some people do that from the start, but if you want to actually make money from this, the more, like, it doesn't matter if you're promoting your product on YouTube or on the audio, they're still hearing it. So the more platforms that you have, the better. So I would actually recommend doing both of them.
Okay, the more the better.
Exactly.
And just from the curiosity, so but because you showed that it was, I think, around like 70,000 or 4,000 downloads of your podcast, right?
Yeah.
I mean, one of the episode or like in total. How does it work in terms of getting money? Like, I mean, in YouTube, you get this monetization because of the, advertisement, but in podcast?
Well, if you're American or Canadian, you can build in the sponsorship. So for example, Anchor has slots that you put in for the sponsors and they want you to record it. So for example, if it was Anchor I'm promoting, I'd say Anchor is a great platform and they'll want it. You can put in 3 if you want. You can put it at the start and mid-roll and then you get paid. So, or else a sponsor can come in and do it. And I would encourage you to make sure it's in line with your values. Don't do it just for the money, because you could lose customers. If you're promoting health and then you bring in something that's not healthy, and I've seen people do that. I would kind of stay with, be ethical and try to stick with that. Don't follow the money, just follow your heart is probably more important. But they haven't set it up for Europe yet. But what you can do, and I've seen, and I'd encourage you to listen to Blind Boy, he set up a Patreon page, which is basically a donation page. And he's saying, hey, would you buy me a cup of coffee or buy me a beer once a month? You can do that. This helps me do all my research and everything. And you can go into patreon.com/the Blind Boy podcast. That's what he says. And like, would you be offended with someone saying that? No. So, the reality is somebody can donate £5 or £1. And like, there's some people making, 100,000 a month based on that. So it's worth looking at that model as well.
Great, thank you. It was really interesting and useful information. So if there is no any question, Roy, thank you very much for encouraging us, providing information how to set up our own podcasts. And who knows, maybe, in a half a year, when you deliver a next workshop or like even earlier, some of us will share this information with you, and one of us may have own podcast. Thank you very much. And
thank you for having me on. Thank you very much.
yes, and I hope